increased the allowances for inmates to 50%. I mean, it's a good thing, is it a bad thing? All of this we're going to be getting to know in a few minutes. And we have in the studio with us Father Jude Isiguzo, and he is the executive director of Capio. He's in the studio with us to discuss in detail all we need to know about this, how it has been, where they are, and where they are going. Good morning, Father.
Good morning to you.
Wonderful to have you here with us in the studio.
Thanks so much.
I mean, you look very good.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so Capio. Before we even go into our discussion today, what is Capio? A lot of people are wondering, what is Capio?
All right, thank you so much for having me. Capio means Carmelite Prisoners Interest Organization. It is an NGO founded about 30 years ago, and we advocate for the rights, needs, and of course, welfare of inmates. That is what you know as prisoners in custodial centers. We also push for reforms in the laws that concerns the correctional sectors too, and also the judiciary also. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. So now let's talk about the allowances before. Okay. How has it been before?
Okay. All right. The allowances for Nigerian Correctional Service before now has been for each inmate, it is allocated 750 naira per inmate per day. In other words, before now, I mean, now the number of inmates in custody center is about 84,000. Yeah.
Wait, come again?
It's about 84,000 inmates in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yes,
the whole of Nigeria.
The whole of Nigeria,
okay,
yes.
I wanted to have...
Okay, yeah, it's the whole of Nigeria. But about out of this, it's 4,000, 82,000 plus are males. So 1,900 just females alone. That's the situation.
Wow.
So,
do we have more males committing crimes?
Well, that's what it appears to be.
Wow.
That is it. So, before now, the feeding allowance for the inmates have been really so poor, in the sense that an inmate is entitled to 750 naira per day. That is breakfast, lunch, and supper. In other words, it boils down to 250 naira per meal. So you see that in Nigerian context, this does not really make sense, and doesn't really, it doesn't show that there is that concern for the well-being and welfare of the inmates. If you remember sometime last year, I think around November, thereabout, when the chairman, the Senate Committee on Interiors, Senator Adams Oshomole, was having conversation with the Nigerian correctional officers, asking them about the feeding of these inmates. And they told him that one inmate is being fed on 750 naira. And he was like, is it that possible in Nigerian context? And as at then, dogs, the security dogs they use in correctional centers, they use 850 naira to feed one. So in other words, more allowance is given to the dogs than to the humans. So that brought up the whole thing about the need to review the feeding allowance of these inmates. Now the progression moved from, it was in 2022 when they were feeding on 450 naira. So it was at that point, that 2022, they now increased it to 750 naira. You see, so yet it wasn't doing anything. So there was that need. So when the Controller General of Corrections met with them and then discussed with them the need, in fact, he wrote that there is need to increase the feeding allowance of these inmates. And thanks to God, they hearkened to his request and then increased it to about 40 billion naira annually. This 40 billion naira annually boils down to about 1,500 naira per inmate per day. That's what it boils down to. Maybe we'll leave here for now as we talk more and go on. We'll say more, yeah, because a lot of things, when you look at that 1,500 naira, does that 1,500 naira really come down to one inmate? as 1,500 naira? That's the question we need to ask. It is a budget, yes. Federal government has approved the budget. So coming down from the headquarters, moving from the, their feeding is a contract, being contracted. So before this amount gets down to one inmate, will it still remain 1,500? That's the question we need to ask. So that it won't be the case that, yes, they have approved 40 billion naira every year, but then their feeding still remains the same. And now the situation of the economy is even getting worse. Because when this request was made, it is never envisaged that the economy would be this bad.
Okay, so, Father, let's hit the nail on the head. Okay. When you talk about these budgets, getting down to the inmate, how does it get down? What's the breakdown? Does it actually, reach them at that 750 naira?
Yes, that's where the problem is. Their feeding is being contracted. So when it's being contracted, the people that provide the food, right? It is expected that they will send these monies to different state commands for them to provide the food and then attend to the feeding of the inmates. But because it is being contracted, the problem with contracts in Nigeria. So moving from one hand to the other, it is not an accusation. I'm not saying that it happens, but this is the possibility that 1,500 or the previous 750 doesn't get down to the inmate. If it does, know how the inmates will be having at least one good meal per day. But oftentimes it is not the case. If you heard about the ugly story that broke out sometime last year, I think in one of the correctional centers in Calabar, where a video that went viral showing the poor feeding of the inmates, which attracted the attention of the Minister of Interior to even set panel to investigate if that actually was the case, because the feeding was, dogs can't even eat that food, and that was what they are being fed on. So that video even pushed them to do something to increase. So the breakdown is, the truth is that if this current 1,500 naira gets to the inmates, they will have at least one good meal per day. And they will look good. A good number will look good. Yeah. So it is important to know that they are being incarcerated doesn't remove the right that they should feed well. They have the right to feed well.
So let's talk about Capio now. What role does Capio play, or how do they monitor these funds that have been allocated to different states?
All right. Yeah. Before now, we've not been actually monitoring funds. We've not gone into monitoring the budget allocated to them. Yeah, because the truth is that it takes a lot to monitor budgets and then to. But what we do is, every now and then we advocate that their feeding should be improved. At least here in Enugu State, we ensure that they do that and that they provide. But, government cannot do it alone. In Enugu Consider Center, they are about 2,700. So when you multiply these 2,700 plus by, let's say, 1,500 naira per day, millions of naira they spend per day. But that money, they don't receive it here per day. If they do, the inmates will be feeding well. And so what we do is that we advocate both on state level and at the federal level too, to ensure that the money meant for the inmates will come down to them and will be used for their feeding. Remember, we are talking about feeding allowance alone. Their medicals is not included in this money.
Yeah, I was about to.
Yeah, so it's not included in that. Yes. So this is just for feeding.
So if they don't get that financial budget for them here in Enugu, how do they survive?
They do, but not, as I said, not the whole budget. Because if they get the whole thing, it will show in their feeding. You will see it yourself. Nobody will tell you. But because the kind of feeding they are being fed on is so poor, tells you that they don't get enough money for it. So even though it has been approved, but what is sent and what is received is different from what is being approved.
So apart from feeding, you mentioned medical. So can you tell us other areas that this allowance can be able to be beneficial?
this allowance is purely for feeding.
Okay.
As for their medicals, they send medications from the headquarters in Abuja. So it's from there they disburse medications to different custodial centers. But the question is, what kind of medications, and do they really get enough medications? The truth remains that custodial centers are poorly funded. That is why when you go to the clinics there, you hardly see any medication. At most, Panadol, if you see any, Panadol. And then, how do they attend to their health when they are sick? Because they are prone to fall sick, and they constantly fall sick. So they rely so much on NGOs to come to their aid. So, like Capio, every 3 months, we go to the custodial centers with our medical team, volunteers. We have to we source for the drugs, quality drugs, of course, and then we go there, attend to their health.
Okay, do you accept philanthropists, coming in to help?
Oh yes, very well. We do. In fact, we call on philanthropists to assist as much as possible, because the truth is that federal government cannot do it alone. And sometime last year or thereabouts, they have to remove Nigerian Correctional Service from the exclusive list of government. There is now in the concurrent list, meaning that the state governments now have the power to look into the custodial centers in their states and also support the federal government in feeding them and other things that
So speaking of other things, apart from feeding and the medical aspect, what other areas does those inmates need urgent attention to?
All right, so apart from their feeding and medical needs, they need urgent attentions on their welfare, on their cases. Most of them, of course, they go to court. A good number of inmates are so indigent, so poor, that they can't afford to pay for the services of lawyers. This is the reason why most of them remain there for a long time, awaiting trial. Because when they don't have money to engage a lawyer to represent them at the courts, what do you say? They will remain there forever. Only when maybe government remembers them and goes for what we call, of course, here in Enugu State, the chief judge goes jail delivery every year. So it is then that such persons may be brought to him, to his attention. They will look into their case, and some will be released, some will be discharged, some will be granted bail. So they need urgent attention in this area of representing them in courts, the indigent ones, the poor ones. Those are the ones that, because there are some of them from well-to-do families, so their families take care of their own cases. But these poor ones who are there, some of them don't even know why they are there, and they just found themselves there. So these are the ones that, where we need a philanthropist to come in to support them, to engage lawyers. In our organization, Capio, we have a team of lawyers. So we pay the lawyers, of course, salary every month, but they represent the indigent inmates pro bono, free of charge. We don't charge for anything we do in custodial centers. So even when we provide, sometimes from time to time, feeding, medications, clothing, and all that. So any service we render is pro bono.
Yes, but from your experience, we've always heard that inmates spend a lot of time in the prison, especially before they even get to appear in court. From your own experience, how long does it usually take sometimes?
Before now, some years ago, it takes quite a long time.
Can you estimate?
An inmate can stay 5, 6, 7 years awaiting trial. And I'm not even talking, even now, the majority of the inmates, 95% are awaiting trial. Some of them have spent 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years awaiting trial.
Wow.
Now, depending on the case, some capital offenses that takes long. Some are in Enugu, over 10 years, they are still awaiting trial. So it's actually the kind of case that makes it that long. But ordinarily, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the case. But again, the reason, and part of the reason why it takes this long for them is that we do not have enough judges or magistrates. So you see one judge or one magistrate having so many cases to attend to in a year. So how many will she attend to in a year? So and then any case that is being adjourned, he or she, the judge has to put into consideration if that time is favorable for her or for him to hear the cases.
So the major issue is that we don't have enough.
We don't have enough judges, enough magistrates.
Okay, for the benefit of our viewers, can you, mention some of these capital offenses that usually make them
okay, well,
take long?
Yeah, the capital offenses, I mean, most of them kidnapping cases. Kidnapping is a major thing. Some murder cases, robbery too, robbery. So these are some of the capital offenses that keep inmates for a long time awaiting trial. So it is not that they don't go to court, they do go. But if the complainant, is it not when they accept to, I mean, when they find, it's until there is judgment, that's when the case comes to an end. So if there's no judgment, the case continues.
Okay, so the federal government has tried now with the budget to increase by 50%, which is good. But do you think this is all they need to do? Do you think this alone will address the broader issues that the inmates are passing through when it comes to welfare and their health care as well? Do you think this will do much?
All right. The increment in their feeding allowance is a good step. However, it is, in my own view, just 1% out of the many things they need to do to attend to.
1%.
Yes, because the main thing there is not just to about feeding them. No. They are being incarcerated. What are you doing about them being incarcerated? What are you doing about their rehabilitation? What are you doing about their reformation? We have, as I said before, over 80,000 inmates in considered centers in Nigeria. These are human capitals that can be invested, that can be utilized for the good of the country, for the good of the state. So increasing their allowance to be feeding them, they will eat and go and sleep, or what? So there is need to establish industries in the considered centers. That is very important. Considered centers in Nigeria have that enough human capital to produce whatever you can think of in Nigeria, and at no cost to the government. No cost.
I mean, they are just working their time.
They are just working. So there, you see that if an inmate spends, for example, 3 years in considered center, and he or she is being engaged productively. For example, a man who learns carpentry in the considered center, produces upholstery and seats and all that. When he leaves, he will not become a nuisance to the community. He will not go back to his crime. He will not want to continue. He will now want to do what? To establish that business that he learned in the considered center. In that way, the society will become good. So if we spend this money feeding them, and we are not talking about
how they
generate money internally, is a problem.
Because there's some lands that they can use.
Technically, there is farmlands. Coastal Center have farmlands. In Enugu, their own farmland is at Ibitolu in Izagulu government. That's a massive land for farming. Now, the inmates that work there are those that have about, let's say, 6 months or less to finish their service terms.
Okay.
So usually when your term is remaining of like 6 months to end, some of them will be sent to that farm to work. But the question is, what investment has the government put in those farmlands? Is it mechanized to make the farming easier and more productive? Up to this day, they use hoes, and so how many would they farm? And weeding is a problem. So when you go there, it is like a bush. Only few places are being farmed. What is being farmed or what is being produced cannot even feed the few inmates who are there, let alone feeding others.
Why do they wait till 6 months before they allow them go to the farmland?
Yes, it's part of the law. 6 months means that your term is almost ending. Yeah. So going to that land,
so even if you run away,
no, if you run away, it's your own detriment. You know that you have a 6 months, and why would you be running away? If you run away, it's another crime of its own. Yes, another crime. Yeah. So with that 6 months, they'll be sent there. It's a farmland, but that doesn't mean it's just open that way. No, okay. It's also they have where. Yeah, it's also empty.
So let's talk about all the activities they engage in the I'm talking about the inmates. What other activities do they engage in?
Yes, they engage in a lot of activities. One is sports. They do sports a lot. They play football. In fact, last week Friday, they played the finals in Enugu Correctional Center here.
Wow.
And you see what I'm talking about? They have players. If you're looking for footballers, you get them there. So if when I mean football that can play in national team, they are there. They are there. And you enjoy watching their football. So they engage in this activity, which is necessary for them to exercise is very important. So apart from that and sports, other sports, even table tennis, what they call a lot of activities.
Okay, snooker.
Snookers, yes, they engage in all of that.
What about for females, female inmates?
Females here in Enugu is a problem because their own prison is within prison. And that makes it practically impossible for them to have access to a playing ground so that where they can play freely. Here, their own section is very small, so there is no space for such big exercises, I mean outdoor exercises, except small, maybe playing ludos and all that. That's the only thing they can engage in there. However, once in a year, like during the these sports too, females sometimes they play against the males. Yes, it's part of it, but it's not always the case. It's just maybe 1 or twice in a year, which shouldn't be the case. If it is where we have a separate considered centers for female, like in Lagos State, they have a separate considered center for females. They have a playground. They come out freely and have times for their sports, and then they will be engaged.
Are there skills, they are being trained in?
Very well. Yes, they learn skills too. They learn soap making. They learn seamdress, what is it called? Fashion, tailoring. Yeah. In fact, we provided some machines there, sewing machines for them.
Okay, private organization or the federal
yes, private organizations. Yeah. Most of these things are being done by private organizations. As I said, federal government can't do it alone.
But let's not even leave federal government now. State government. What is the state government doing?
Yeah, state government have not been doing anything until that last year that they now removed it from exclusive list and put it in a concurrent list. But for Enugu State, the present governor, Itamba, he has plans to build a state-of-the-art correctional center where all these things will be, and then states will now take full charge of the correctional center.
How long do you think that would take?
I'm not in his mind to know how long, but I believe that before the end of his tenure, he would do something about it.
Okay, so there's a misconception per se from people that when you hear correctional center, they just be like, all those people, they're prisoners, they're this, they're this. How do you correct that notion? How do you make people see that, okay, these people are still people regardless? They just committed an offense. Probably some, just like you said, did lead to, because of the timing of them appearing in court stakes. So people have that mindset, are prisoners, they're prisoners. So yes. How do you correct that?
Yes, it's something we do on a daily basis. And it is important to know that anybody can be in prison, correctional center. Anybody can find him or herself there. You may be wondering how possible is that? You may be just walking on a street and there is this random arrest. Please just arrest somebody. You go to their police bar, stay there. Before you know it, they charge you to court. Maybe the person doesn't have money to bail himself or herself at the police station. Ordinarily, you shouldn't use money to bail. But some have found themselves in the correctional center because they are not able to bail themselves with small money, be it 5,000 or 30,000 naira. Such persons did not commit any, if you like, crime in quotes, but he is in considered center. Some other persons committed minor offenses, fighting with a neighbor. Before you know it, the other person calls police for you, you're arrested, you find yourself in jail. Some capital offenses. Now, the problem is that minor offenders are in the same considered centers with these hardened criminals. So you see that it makes reformation and rehabilitation difficult and impossible, because once you have been incarcerated there, some of these minor offenders, some of them may be poor, nobody, their family doesn't visit them, no feeding, and so in order to survive, they will begin to attach themselves to these big men in quotes who committed capital offenses in order to survive, in order to eat. Gradually, they begin to indoctrinate them. They begin to influence them negatively. And so when they come out, they become worse than they were before going in. So it is important to know that not everybody in custody center committed is is a criminal in quotes. Good persons are there, good people are there in custody center. It's just the situation they found themselves that brought them there. And inmates in custody centers, they are humans too. So if you are used to going there, we go there, they are friendly. They are very good people there. And some of them, even you look at their cases, you see that they ought not to be there. But because of law now, they find themselves there. And so it is not everybody who is in custody center that is a criminal or a bad person, so to speak. And when we take note of this, it will help us in how we view them, how we see them, that they are bad people or that they are evil people. No, not all of them are bad. Not all of them are evil people. Good ones are there.
Okay, how does Capio, how does it, correct or monitor inmates monopolizing the other?
All right, thank you so much. Because we are NGO and we are not correctional staff, so to speak, we are not officers. We have the limit to what we can do. But however, in correcting them, we do a lot. First of all, as a Catholic NGO, I'm a priest, so we go there every Sunday to celebrate Mass for them. So in the course of our Mass, in preaching to them, we bring these issues in. So we don't just go there no, we preach things that concerns them, matters that concerns them. So in that way, you are being and let them understand that the bad ones or the good ones shouldn't mingle with the bad ones. They should be careful. They should remain as good as they are. And so we teach catechism for them. We counsel them. So these are ways in which we ensure that they will not mingle. But in attending to their needs, physical and welfare needs, we provide medications for them. So we will constantly tell them, if you are sick and you go to the clinic, if there is need for you to go to outside hospitals, because they take some of them to outside hospital, and there is no money to pay, let us know. We provide that for them, so that they won't see any reason to go and mingle with hardened criminals who will destroy their good characters.
Okay, so having 80,000 plus or minus inmates all over the world, all over Nigeria rather, do you think there's a police factor as well, having to, just like you said, just random arrest? Do you think that's a factor of why the number keeps increasing?
Yes, there is. In fact, the police factor is a major thing. Most inmates in custody centers ought not to be there. Yeah, when police makes arrest, some of these things should end at the police stations. Some of them. But Nigerian thing is that if you don't give me money, I will even worsen your case. And now some of these police people, they write the statements for these inmates by themselves. So in other words, in writing it, they will have to put something that will incriminate that person. So, but the problem is that most of us Nigerians, we don't know our rights. They are not supposed to write the statement for me. They are not even supposed to compel me to write. I have the right to write or not to write. So if someone finds him or herself in police station, the best thing is you call a lawyer that will be there for you and guide you on what to write, so that they will not incriminate you, because whatever they write is what they will take and put in your file, and that goes to court. That is what the court will begin to judge with until they now hear from you.
Which might take years.
Which might take years. So that is why you see most people, they say their case is murder, but they didn't commit any murder. It might be that maybe the person is driving and hit somebody. It's not, that is not, it's a manslaughter. But to make the case heavy, they put murder. And then the judge would see that murder until they begin to investigate and interrogate you, which will take a long time.
Okay, so in your view, how should the government ensure transparency and accountability in this money that has been released? Because it's very important. So how can they do that?
Yes, there is need for Nigerian Correctional Service, first of all, to be transparent in what they do. If they publish in their newsletters monthly what they spend in feeding inmates for the months, it will help them. It will even help to trace this money that left the headquarters, and did it arrive at each of the custodial centers as it's supposed to be? Because each custodial centers should have their own allocations. So that money meant for them, does it arrive as it is? So if they are not transparent in letting even people know what each custodial center gets and whether that money really arrives to them, it will be difficult to even help them or to see that the inmates are well fed. Because if there is no transparency, we'll hear that billions has been allocated for them, but at the end, they are still feeding as if nothing was being, there was no increment. So there is need for the Nigerian Correctional Service themselves to be strict in disbursing this money and to ensure that it gets to the custodial centers.
Okay, what are some of the challenges you would say that are being faced by the prison authorities, in providing adequate nutrition, even now that the allowance is being increased?
The challenge will be the case that, yes, the money has been approved. I pray that what is approved will get to them. I said I pray will get to them.
Who would ensure that it gets to them? Who?
Is the prison authority. Yeah, they are the ones to ensure that it will get to them. What is meant for them, it will get to them. So if, you see, when we are transparent and open in our work, and you do not take bribes, you'll find it difficult to even give another person bribe or allow. But if you begin to take any little bribe, whoever is giving you money will find 1,000 reasons not to give you the complete money, because the person wants to remove his or her own. So it's important that Nigerian Correctional Service is very strict in ensuring that this money comes to them and that it gets to the custodial centers. And so the challenge is basically that the contractors, those who will receive the money to buy the foods and all that, are they being monitored? It's important. I send you to market to buy food of, say, 10 million naira. When you buy that, is there somebody, do you have a procurement team, a committee that ensures that what is budgeted is being bought, and what is bought, there are some supporting documents that say, oh, okay, this was bought and this arrived at the custodial center. So if there is no monitoring, then it may still go, it boils down to them living as they used to live.
Okay. So because of time, we'll start rounding up now. So how do you think the issue of overcrowding can be solved? Is there a solution to it? Do you think that there is one?
All right, yes, there are a lot of solutions to overcrowding. First of all is a speedy dispensation of justice. Courts has a lot to do in this regard. It is not every case that you keep adjourning. Courts has a lot to do, especially minor offenses. You adjourn 1, 2, 3 times, discharge the person or let the person go or grant the person bail. That is one. Secondly is state governors has a lot. In fact, the Constitution has empowered them to do a lot when it comes to custodial centers. There is what is called the state pardon, the prerogative of mercy, which is bestowed upon the governor. He can use this to release inmates as many as possible. Now, I'm not talking about releasing criminals to the society. No, it is not. It's never called for. But releasing, you see that these are minor offenders, first-time offenders. These are first-time offenders. What are they doing in custodial centers? These are minor offenders. What are they doing in custodial centers? Wasting their time. We are still advocating for what we call a community service in Enugu State, community service sentencing. That community service will go a long way to decongest custodial centers. So if minor offenders, for example, someone stole 5,000 naira, for example, you call police for the person is being arrested, taken to the court. The court has the power to say, I hereby sentence you to 3 months, maximum 6 months community service.
1,000 hour community service.
Go to this particular ministry office, go there and sweep their office 2 times a week, 3 times a week, 5 hours per day. You see that the ministries, department, or even the industries will benefit a lot from this.
Yeah, the beginning.
At no cost. So in that way, you see that if these non-custodial measures is well implemented, the correctional centers will, just within 1 year, be decongested. So that will, in my own view, is something that every state needs to embrace, and embrace it well.
Thank you very much, Father. But maybe before we let you go finally, any other solutions that you think, or any other suggestions?
Your final words.
It's your final word. Any other suggestions you have for the authorities on how to manage? Because I know you would want to tell them, but probably the avenue to do that might be an issue. Yes.
Yes. The authorities have a lot to do, and there is need for them to collaborate with philanthropists, with NGOs, to make their work easier for them. Most of these NGOs are there for the correctional centers, but how they are being welcomed, received, or treated will determine whether they will continue offering their services or not. And then some of them, it's important that the authorities themselves equip themselves or update their knowledge regarding the human rights of the inmates. I'm sorry to say this, was it last year or thereabouts, I was at the headquarters of the Nigerian Correctional Service. An officer was saying that we, Capio, should not be doing anything about the human rights of the inmates. Does that ring? So I was like, I asked him, sir, are you sleeping when you made this statement? Or so it shows that he doesn't know anything about the human rights. So for him, the inmates have no right. They are just, once they're incarcerated, they are the mercy of the officers. It's not the case. So there is need for them to go for courses, update their knowledge on how to attend to these inmates. And also, federal government, state government cannot do it alone. They cannot cater for the welfare of these inmates alone. So there is need for more NGOs, philanthropists, to come and support the work that they are doing. If someone commits a crime and finds him or herself in custodial centers, what the person needs is reformation, rehabilitation, to see the reason that that crime is not beneficial. So it's like a disease that needs to be cured.
Recording in progress.
So that disease that made him to come into the center needs to be cured by reformation and rehabilitation.
So we have rehabilitation centers here in Enugu.
In Enugu, we do. I know there's one in Emene, but whether it's functional is another thing. But it exists. But as an organization, Capio, we are building a state-of-the-art rehabilitation center at Oji River in Enugu State here. It's almost coming to a completion, and hopefully before the year ends, it will we'll start admitting ex-inmates and also vulnerable ones for rehabilitation purposes.
Okay.
So that center has whatever you can think of: skill acquisition center, farmlands where they'll be farming to be sustaining themselves, where they will learn skills, so that at the end of their rehabilitation period, we will do what? Lead the person. You know, in Igbo land, we have this culture that somebody, a learning market. Your master, when you finish serving the person, at the end of that 1 or 2 or 3 years, your master leads you. That's the idea behind the center. So when the person stays there 3 months, 6 months, as the case may be, learn a skill, the person will be
Wow.
equipped to go on with this.
Thank you very much, Father Jude Isiguzio, the Executive Director of Capio. Thank you very much for your invaluable input today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thanks a
coming.
lot.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, you're still tuning into Signature Morning on Signature TV. And of course, we'll be moving ahead to our next interview. Do stick around.